Welcome back, viewers. Tech City, IT Hub, and Garden City. Now, not long ago, these were the terms that were used to describe Bengaluru. But a disturbing trend has now emerged in the recent past. Almost every time the city hits headlines, it is because of poor infrastructure, diminishing green cover, and now even water crisis. Bengaluru finally had some rain last week after a very hot few days, and now we also have some shocking data that puts focus back on how dire the situation in Bengaluru actually is. Out of nearly 800 lakes in BBMP and Bengaluru Urban district limits, 125 lakes have dried up. Yes, 125 lakes. This is around 15% of the total lakes in the Bengaluru city limits. Not just that, 25 more lakes are heading in the same direction. Out of the 125 dried lakes that I'm talking about, 100 are in Bengaluru Urban District alone. In fact, 25 others are from the various BBMP limits that we have. In fact, some lake beds are also now being used as cricket pitches. And this is happening across many places in Bengaluru. Now, experts reportedly say that only a good spell of rainfall in the next 2 weeks can save lakes in Bengaluru city. There is also a fear of over how this could negatively impact the groundwater situation. A lot of questions over the water scarcity in Bengaluru. Earlier we saw how people were forced to use tankers. Borewells had dried up, several such issues came up, and the government had assured that all of that was being taken care of. But now even the lakes are drying up, and Bengaluru is again one of those cities which is at a very high altitude. The water to Bengaluru, the primary source of water is the Kaveri water, which comes from several kilometers away, and that too from a much lower elevation, which means that Bengaluru spends around 3 crore rupees to get water every single day into the capital. So that again highlights how important it is for Bengaluru to preserve its own water bodies, to preserve its own borewells. On the bright side, if you can say that, 6 lakes in Bengaluru right now as we speak are filled to the brim. They're completely full. 19 of these lakes are also 50 to 90% full. But is this really enough to sustain a city of 1.2 crore people? That's the big question. Why do these problems keep cropping up again and again and again? Why is there such massive civic apathy? Why isn't there a comprehensive long-term solution? And also, is petty politics, is petty local politics, I'm talking about the BBMP elections which are not even held over the past 3-4 years now. Are these petty politics really going to quench anyone's thirst? A lot of questions to discuss. We'll also have a panel of experts to discuss this with. But before that, let's take a quick look at my colleague Neha's report.
जी बिल्कुल, देखिए अगर अभी बात की जाए यहाँ पे कर्नाटक की, हम देख सकते हैं कि इनफैक्ट ऑलरेडी यहाँ पे सिवियर हीट वेव का वार्निंग दिया गया है और इसका नतीजा हम देख सकते हैं कि किस तरह से पानी पे ये गिर रहा है, चाहे वाटर शॉर्टेज हो, चाहे वाटर क्राइसिस हो, अभी वो इनफैक्ट लेक्स पे भी उसका असर पड़ रहा है। हम देख सकते हैं कि जो शहर में थे काफ़ी यहाँ पे लेक्स इनफैक्ट ऑलरेडी ड्राई अप हो चुके हैं और बहुत सारे और लेक्स भी आज इसी दिशा में जा रहे हैं। अगर अभी सरकार की बात की जाए यहाँ पे, जैसे कि हीट वेव का वार्निंग दिया गया था और वाटर क्राइसिस को इनफैक्ट मिटिगेट करने के लिए बहुत सारे स्टेप्स डाले जा रहे हैं यहाँ पे सरकार की तरफ से, चाहे लोगों को इसका इनफैक्ट जानकारी देना हो या टैंकर्स का अरेंजमेंट करना हो, पर्टिकुलरली लेक्स को लेकर आज यहाँ पे इनफैक्ट शहर में जो दिखाई जा रहा है उस दिशा में आज ज्यादा कुछ हो नहीं रहा है और इसी मामले को लेकर आज कंसर्न्स एक्टिविस्ट ने रेज किए हैं कि जब तक लेक्स को रिजुविनेट नहीं किया जाएगा तब तक ग्राउंड वाटर लेवल जो है वो ज्यादा बढ़ेगा नहीं और तब तक जो बोरवेल्स ड्राई अप हो चुके हैं तब तक उनमें पानी नहीं भरेगा।
All right, so this is Neha's report from Bengaluru, and of course, a lot of focus on Bengaluru and its water scarcity. The borewells keep drying up. The Kaveri water again also is facing a lot of issue. And again, now we're talking about the lake beds in Bengaluru now being there used as cricket pitches. Joining me on the broadcast are my experts, Dr. Sudhir Krishna, who's the former secretary from the Ministry of Urban Development. And also, in a short while, we'll also be joined by Sandeep Anirudhan, who's the founder of Citizens Agenda. Dr. Sudhir Krishna, let me start with you. What's happening to Bengaluru? Over 1,000 lakes in Bengaluru. Well, we also have Sandeep Anirudhan joining us. So I'll start with Dr. Sudhir Krishna now. Dr. Sudhir Krishna, what's happening in Bengaluru? We're talking about a city which once upon a time had 1,000 lakes. Again, Bengaluru never has had a natural water body to boast as such, but water scarcity has never been an issue like it is today. What exactly is going wrong with the city right now?
As far as lakes are concerned, I think the scenario has changed. earlier lakes used to be filled by natural drainage system. The natural drainage systems, I mean, Bangalore is a typical case. Almost every other city is having similar problem. And the natural drainage systems have been blocked by haphazard construction. And the planning also is such that the planning process does not take into account natural drainage system to the core. Here and there they do, but the traditional, I mean, natural system is all choked. So therefore, the rainwater is not able to reach the lakes. So therefore, the way the lakes were originally getting filled is not happening. Now we have to find ways to fill the lakes. You have already quoted some examples are coming that
All right.
BWSSB is filling up lakes with the recycled water. I mean, that is one example. And there are other methods
Right.
also. The other method is that whatever rainwater is there, the drainage system should reach the lakes. The drainage system does not reach the lakes, So it goes somewhere to the river and bypassing the lakes. And that has to be recreated. The planners have to sit along with BWSSB and BBMP, the town planning authorities of the BDA. They all must sit together and find a way that stormwater must reach the lakes. That is one point. Secondly, it is not possible to lay pipelines to reach the recycled water to all the lakes. The way out is that there should be small STPs. Wherever lakes are there, on the shores of the lake, nearby the lake, a small STP should be installed, which will not cost much. 100 kiloliter per day STP will cost something like 50 lakh rupees. And therefore, that can be installed, and there the recycled water
Right,
from
Dr. Sudhir Krishna,
neighborhood
again, I'll come
can
back to that. You're talking about all the measures that are being taken to ensure that the groundwater levels are also kept in check. But Sandeep Anirudhan, this is, of course, a very important point that Dr. Sudhir Krishna is raising of the water bodies which are already existing, now running out of water as well. I also have a report from last month where BWSSB said that it has already constructed 986 recharge wells at various locations to ensure that these water bodies get water. Where exactly are these recharge wells? Why isn't the water going to the lake beds? Because while on one hand the government says that the recharge wells are pumping water into these lake beds, we don't see any water. The data suggests that 15% of the lakes in Bengaluru have already dried up. What's exactly happening?
See, the problem is far more complicated and it's not easily understood. The lake system in Bengaluru is built around its natural drainage system. We have about 5 river systems. So these natural drainages, our ancient people built bunds across it, and that's how by some estimates, Bengaluru had about 2,000 lakes. The total water we bring from Kaveri today, it's about 10 to 15 TMC. But the rainfall that Bengaluru gets, which these lakes used to store, is between 15 to 25 TMC. We get more rainfall than we bring from Kaveri. But look at the ridiculousness of our planning process that we discarded our natural water security, we destroyed our lake system, and we let all our rainfall flow away into our neighboring districts and states. And we are bringing water from Kaveri, which is 100 kilometers away. And that is also only about half of it. So the problem is with the planning. We don't have competent planning authorities because, first of all, we don't have a metropolitan planning committee, which the 74th Amendment has specified 30 years back. So therefore, we don't have planners. Therefore, everything that happens in Bengaluru is unplanned, be it development, be it water supply, be it anything else. And instead of one city government, we have some 25 parastatals. That is the beginning of the problem. The lakes themselves, after having gone through such a severe crisis of water, the government has not thought it important to prioritize water security. These lakes store our
Absolutely.
rainwater.
Sandeep, I'll come
Most
to
of
that.
it
I'll come to what the
wetlands.
government is trying to do, and we'll discuss that as well. But also, I'll ask my team to play the graphics that we have of the Bengaluru's water sources. Where exactly does Bengaluru get water from? It is very important to understand so that people also get an idea as to what exactly is the issue in Bengaluru. We have those graphics ready. We'll be playing that in a bit as well about the water sources of Bengaluru. Now, Bengaluru gets half of its water from Kaveri River, which again, from the data that I have right now, it's 90 kilometers away from the city. And to pump water from Kaveri to Bengaluru, it costs around 3 crore rupees every single day. And that's just about 50% of Bengaluru's water requirement. The other 50% is the borewell water that we again seriously depend on. Now, the problem is not the water scarcity from Kaveri. The problem is the water scarcity from the borewells. Dr. Sudhir Krishna, what exactly are the measures that the government should be taking? Because this is not a new problem. The problem with borewells has been around for a long time. Have there been any long-term solutions that the government has initiated to take care of this? Because we clearly don't see anything happening on the ground.
You see, what Bangalore is trying is the right thing. Bangalore means BWSSB, but only thing is they have to hasten, and that is that they have to widen, spread the network of pipe supply to nook and corner, so that people don't have to depend on the borewells.
Right.
That is their ambition, that is their vision, and they are doing also. But they have to hasten up. In the Kaveri stage 5 has to be hastened up, completed. I suppose it is to be completed shortly, but then they have to extend further also. So because borewells cannot be the source of regular water supply in today's times. In olden time, it was all right. Here and there, houses were scattered. Now, multi-story high-rises are there. And if they all start depending on borewells, which they are doing now in many cities, including Bengaluru, then borewells cannot support. Number one. Number two, you also mentioned about recharge borewells being, dug up in many places. Digging up borewell is one thing, recharge pits, but recharge pits have to be maintained. Have you ever heard that recharge pits are being maintained properly? Very soon they get filled up with dirt and silt and garbage, and they don't recharge the subsoil water
Exactly.
as they were intended to. So a large scale project has to be taken up for servicing the recharge pits. So the pipeline network has to be spread to nook and corner on a war footing, because as you rightly said, that Kaveri water, in fact, if 1400 mld water per day is a lot of water. And if you take 100 liter per capita, it's a very large quantity. 100 liter per capita is not a small quantity. You take in 15-liter bucket, something like 7 buckets per
Exactly.
head per day.
Exactly. Dr. Sudhir
That
Krishna,
much.
very important point that you're making there. A city like Bengaluru, which has around 1.2 crore population, cannot be depending on tankers and borewells. There needs to be a long-term solution that needs to be worked out. And whatever the government is doing right now isn't working out, because on one hand, while the city is expanding to different nooks and corners, on the other hand, we see the entire recharge wells that they're talking about. This, of course, is very, very limited. And at least that's the understanding that I'm having right now of what's happening in Bengaluru. Also, Sandeep, if we can also talk about the citizens. Now, we can sit here as citizens, talk about what the government has done, they have not done. We can blame the politicians. But again, as citizens also, there needs to be an awareness that needs to be created as far as water scarcity is concerned. Do you think there's enough knowledge, enough education that's being put out there by the government as far as structural solutions? I'm talking about structural solutions are concerned when it comes to rainwater harvesting, wastewater treatment. Do you think people have enough idea about it?
Ashish, Bengaluru is a city which is known for lawlessness. Any law there is, bylaws, building bylaws,
Right.
BDA laws, BWSSB laws, nobody follows it and there is zero enforcement. In fact, when you give a building plan approval, every building is supposed to have rainwater harvesting. None of the new buildings that are coming up have rainwater harvesting. So typically there's a failure in governance here. This is a given. Unfortunately, that's what the state of this IT capital is. There is zero enforcement of laws, and that's the largest problem. Secondly, when we talk about a systemic issue, we are talking about the policy that we have in existence. The policy we have at present is to use piped water from a faraway place, which is an unsustainable policy, because the river Kaveri itself is drying up because all its catchment is getting destroyed, the forests are getting destroyed. So year on year, there are droughts along the Kaveri basin also. So we are stupid at two levels. One, we have about 15 to 25 TMC rainfall. Our ancients used to store them here. We are just letting them away after so-called modern engineering and all that. So we need to consider whether this dependence on Kaveri was the right decision. In my opinion, it was a wrong decision, because the moment we got Kaveri water piped into our pipes into our taps, we stopped respecting the lakes in our neighborhood, the ponds in our neighborhood, and the wells in our neighborhood. All this water, about 20 to 25
Absolutely.
TMC of rainfall,
Right.
if it is put in lakes and if it is put into the ground, it will let that city have water throughout the year. We don't have to even depend on Kaveri. We can use Kaveri as a secondary source. For that, we have to reform the policy. We have to change the policy into one of local water resilience. The problem is most engineers and most planners don't even understand such concepts, because engineering is a very flawed science. It is very, what do you call it? It's very reductionist. You need to have ecologists. We need to have a holistic planning. And for that, we need to bring in proper planners, and we have to change the way Bengaluru depends on water.
Absolutely, Sandeep, like you
Otherwise,
rightly
we
pointed out,
cannot change the
holistic
city.
planning is what Bengaluru needs. And the day Kaveri water becomes a secondary source for Bengaluru, that is exactly the threshold point that we're talking about. That is exactly when Bengaluru will get out of its water woes. A very important point that you're talking about there. Dr. Sudhir Krishna, before we wrap the discussion up, a very important thing that, of course, I don't want to get into the politics of it. There's, of course, political statements that keep coming out. But the Prime Minister made a very significant statement recently. He said Bengaluru has gone from a tech city to a tanker city. And while you might look at it with political lens, it's also important to understand what he's trying to say. Now, the focus in Bengaluru with multiple governments, be the BJP government or the Congress government, the focus has been on trying to find some sort of a solution when it's summer and when it's already too late. Why aren't there enough plans put in place? These recharge wells that we're talking about, these natural drainage connection systems that we're talking about, why isn't all of this done when the monsoons are there and when there's an opportunity to actually preserve and conserve water?
Yes, I think there are plans. As I understand, there are plans for spreading the water pipeline network. But only thing is the plans are not being implemented timely. That is one. Similarly, there are plans for rejuvenating the lakes, rejuvenating the borewells. But these have to be speeded up and they have to be, closely monitored. So it is very, and thirdly, the water supply that has to be metered. In many places, water supply, either it is not metered or meters are not working. So metered water supply with the progressive tariff, like first 30 or for 100 liters per head, I mean, for the house is free, then second 50 liter will be charged at whatever, something like that, just like income tax. So you have a motivation to save on water usage. So metered water supply with a progressive tariff, that is one necessity. And secondly, the pipe water supply network has to be the program, only approved plan has to be implemented timely. Thirdly, the recharge pits have to be serviced and the groundwater has to be recharged regularly. Fourthly, the lakes have to be replenished with water by putting up small STPs. If you put up large STPs and bring huge pipelines to recharge the lakes, I think that will not be really sustainable because maintenance cost will be very high and very high technology will be required to manage this. Small plants will manage locally. These are the steps I would recommend, which will definitely help the city. It is Bangalore is a pride city for a whole country. It is a city of pride. And we all should see that in all ways it is nurtured. Water should not come in the way of growth and development of city and its citizens. A solution is very much in our hand.
Right. Right, Dr. Sudhir Krishnan. Before we wrap this discussion up, Sandeep, concluding remark from your end, because a lot of people talk about how Bengaluru is again not naturally gifted when it comes to water bodies. It obviously had 1,000 lakes before, and it already had a very good natural drainage system. But the fact of the matter is, the closest major water source to Bengaluru is nearly 100 kilometers away. Bengaluru is at a very high elevation, which means that it cannot even extract the groundwater resources like other cities can. So, as someone who's obviously worked in this sphere for a long time now, what's your advice to the government? What exactly should the governments be doing to ensure that this isn't an issue that we face every single time? And while we, of course, don't do anything about it during the monsoon season, suddenly when it's summer, everyone starts talking about it, everyone starts pulling up the government. So, even as far as the government is concerned, as far as citizens are concerned, what should be the primary focus?
Ashish, we have to go back to our roots. We have to go back to our local wisdom. Bengaluru traditionally stored rainwater in its ground. We were actually dependent on groundwater. Even the lakes replenish groundwater. Every lake that is replenished, about 5 to 10 square kilometers around it, the groundwater resurfaces. And you get water at 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. We should actually depend on only this shallow aquifer. The problem with borewell drilling today is we are going for deep aquifer, which is not a renewable resource. We are drilling at 800,000, 2,000 feet, which is unhealthy for us to consume, and that is not replenishable. But because of our short-sightedness and because we don't have the right technical advice, we have depended on these deep aquifer borewells, which is wrong. So as a policy, see, the problem with Bengaluru is we don't have planning. That's where we are stuck. After 2015 RMP, we don't have a master plan. What we should do is we should freeze development in the city. We should not allow construction. We should not allow any more development until we have a proper master plan. And this master plan should be a green master plan because we are going through an existential crisis of climate change, of heat waves, of water scarcity. Today, water, half of the city is depending on groundwater, which has already reached 2,000 feet. We can't go beyond this. And we are getting water from 20, 30 kilometers away now. So we, as a city, it is dead. In fact, the IT capital of India is not a city of pride. The Supreme Court called it an example, a template for urban ruin. Everybody knows what's going on in Bengaluru is wrong. It is an unplanned growth. This cannot be allowed. We have to freeze
Exactly.
development, get a proper green, sustainable master plan in place, and it
Right.
should be enforced very strictly. We need lawfulness. We need to have rule of law. If all of these are missing, Bengaluru will be it will be a slum. It will be a desert in another 5 to 10 years. It will be unlivable. It already is unlivable, but it's just going to get worse.
Absolutely.
This is the warning I wish to give everyone.
Right. Absolutely, Sandeep. A very important point that you're making there. And also, I think the day everyone stops looking at, in fact, development in terms of the number of roads we have, the number of skyscrapers we have, and also takes the ecology into consideration, I think that's exactly the day we break even and get into an actual sense of development. I appreciate you joining us on the broadcast, Dr. Sudhir Krishna and Sandeep Anirudhan. A very, very important discussion that, of course, a lot of citizens from Bengaluru are also now looking at in terms of water scarcity that has gripped the Silicon City of the nation. Shifting tracks now, forest fires continue to